I didn't think I could feel anything again. Not in the real way. Not the kind that reaches your chest at 3 in the morning and makes you sit at the edge of the bed because lying down suddenly feels impossible. At some point, I stopped calling it loneliness. It became routine instead. You get older, and people stop asking if you're okay because you've learned how to perform stability too well. You show up. You smile when required. You answer messages late enough to seem busy instead of empty. And eventually, even your silence becomes believable. I had built an entire life around that silence. Successful enough that nobody questioned me. Broken enough that I questioned myself constantly. I almost turned this recording off because I'm not used to saying things out loud anymore. Especially not the things that stayed buried under years of pretending I was unaffected. But something inside me won't let me stay quiet now. And maybe somehow this is reaching the woman it was always meant to reach. Not everyone. Just you. The strange thing is, I don't even know your face while I'm saying this, but I feel you. The same way you feel rain before it starts. Something heavy in the air. Something approaching slowly. I think part of me has been waiting for you longer than I understood. There was a night a few years ago. I still remember it too clearly. I walked into my kitchen at 2:17 a.m. because I couldn't sleep again. The house was completely dark except for the light above the stove. I hadn't turned it off earlier, or maybe I left it on because I hated walking into darkness. There was a coffee mug sitting near the sink. Not even mine. Somebody had left it there earlier that week and forgotten it. And I remember staring at that mug like it carried the weight of my entire life. Because the house was quiet in a way that didn't feel peaceful anymore. It felt abandoned. The refrigerator hummed softly. The floor felt cold under my feet. Outside, a car passed somewhere far away, and then nothing again. Just that horrible kind of silence that almost rings in your ears. And I realized something then that I never admitted to anyone. I wasn't afraid of being alone. I was afraid nobody would ever truly stay. That's different. People think men like me fear commitment because we want freedom. No, some of us fear it because we know what it feels like when love leaves the room and takes warmth with it. I learned how to survive loss too early, so I became careful, controlled, hard to reach, and eventually impossible to hold. I didn't say this to anyone then, but I'll tell you now. There were nights I sat with unfinished text messages open on my phone for hours, words I wanted to send. Apologies. Truths. Confessions. Small, vulnerable things that felt too dangerous once the screen lit up, so I deleted them, again and again, until silence became my native language. Maybe you understand that kind of silence. Maybe you've stared at your own phone, hoping one specific person would finally say the thing your heart needed to hear. And maybe they never did. There's a certain pain in waiting that changes a person quietly. Nobody notices it at first, but it starts drying parts of your soul from the inside out. You laugh less naturally. Music stops reaching you the same way. Even beautiful mornings begin feeling emotionally distant. I remember driving home once after a long day. I don't even remember from where anymore, and stopping at a red light while it rained lightly against the windshield. And out of nowhere, this thought hit me. What if nobody actually knows me? Not the public version, not the composed version, the real one, the tired one, the man who still replayed old conversations years later, wondering where he failed the people he loved. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel, while the light stayed red longer than usual. My hands were shaking a little, not dramatically, quietly, like my body knew something. My pride was still trying to hide. I think heartbreak ages people in invisible places first. Not the face, the spirit. You start carrying exhaustion in your eyes that sleep can't fix. And I know that sounds heavy. But if you've ever loved someone deeply and still lost them, then you know exactly what I mean. There are losses that don't end when people leave. They echo in hallways, in songs, in grocery stores, in empty passenger seats. I used to think healing meant forgetting. Now I think it means learning how to remember without collapsing. I'm still learning that. Slowly. There was another moment I never told anyone about. A hospital waiting room, late winter. I won't explain who was there because some memories still feel too sacred to unwrap completely. But I remember the vending machine light glowing against the wall while everybody else slept in those stiff blue chairs. And I remember looking around that room, realizing every person there was quietly begging life not to take someone from them. Nobody spoke, but pain was everywhere. You could feel it. I think that was the first time I understood how deeply human beings need each other. Not casually, not socially, spiritually, like warmth in freezing weather. And maybe that sounds strange coming from someone who spent years emotionally hiding from the world. But sometimes the people who avoid love the most are the ones starving for it underneath. I know I was. The truth is, I got good at being needed, but terrible at being known. There's a difference. Being needed feels useful. Being known feels dangerous, because once somebody truly sees you, they can leave carrying pieces of you that never fully return. That fear ruined things for me more than once. About halfway through my life, I started believing I was the kind of person people eventually abandon. I never said it out loud because it sounds weak when a grown man admits it, especially one who spent years appearing calm and untouchable. But it was there. Every time someone got close, a quiet panic, a voice whispering, "They'll leave too. It's only a matter of time." So I would pull away first emotionally, become distant before they could disappear themselves. And then afterward, I'd sit alone, wondering why connection kept slipping through my hands. It took me years to realize I was helping create the very loneliness I feared. God, that's hard to admit, especially to you, because something in me wants you to see me as steady, wise, certain. But I'm not certain. I'm just honest now. Finally honest. And maybe honesty is the first real doorway back to love, not the cinematic version, not obsession, not fantasy. I mean the kind where two wounded people stop pretending they aren't scared. The kind where silence no longer feels like punishment. I don't know why, but lately I've started imagining small things again. Quieter future. Warm light through windows. Late conversations in tired voices, someone asking if I made it home safe, a hand reaching for mine without needing a reason. And what scares me most is that part of me actually wants it. After all these years, I didn't think hope could come back this softly, like footsteps approaching from another room. I still don't fully trust it, maybe because every beautiful thing I loved once seemed temporary. But if you're out there listening to this, if your heart has also grown tired from carrying disappointments nobody ever saw, then maybe you understand why this is difficult for me to say. I think love might still be possible for people like us. Not perfect love, just real love. The kind that stays when the performance ends. And maybe that's why I couldn't stay silent anymore. Because somewhere along the way, I started feeling that this message belonged to someone whose heart was also standing in the dark, wondering if warmth would ever return. Maybe yours. I didn't know then that someone would someday listen to what I never said. There was a period of my life when I stopped opening the curtains. Not because I hated the sunlight. I just didn't want the day asking anything from me. That's the kind of exhaustion. Nobody notices from the outside. You still answer. Still show up to meetings. Still shake hands and make people laugh at the right moments. But inside, something has quietly shut down. And the frightening part is how normal it begins to feel. And maybe age does this strange thing, where your memories stop lining up neatly. They arrive out of order. One scent can drag you 10 years backward. One lonely evening can reopen a wound you thought had finally scarred over. I almost stopped recording this tonight because some confessions feel dangerous once they become real words. But something inside me keeps pushing me towards you, toward whoever you are. Maybe because I know what it feels like to need one honest voice in the middle of emotional darkness. And maybe I'm hoping mine reaches you before you disappear completely into your own silence, the way I once did. There's a memory I carry that still unsettles me. An apartment hallway. Winter. I remember standing there after an argument that should have been smaller than it became. The overhead light buzzed softly, one of those pale yellow lights that makes everything look tired. And then I heard the door close, not violently. That almost would have been easier. No, it closed quietly, soft enough that it sounded final. I stood there afterward, staring at the wood grain on the door, like my brain couldn't understand what had just happened. My hands were cold. I could hear footsteps fading on the other side, and something in my chest started collapsing inward. But I didn't run after her. That's the part that still haunts me. I stayed frozen. Pride can look strangely calm while it destroys your life. I told myself she needed space. I told myself if she loved me, she'd come back. But the truth? I was terrified. Terrified that if I opened that door and asked her to stay, she might still leave anyway. So instead, I acted unaffected. God, men can ruin beautiful things trying not to look weak. I didn't understand it at the time. I thought strength meant emotional control, distance, silence. Nobody teaches you that numbness can become a prison, especially for men who learned early that vulnerability gets used against you. And maybe you know something about that too. Maybe you've sat beside someone who looked calm while emotionally disappearing inch by inch right in front of you. That kind of loneliness hurts differently because technically they're still there, but not really. I became that person once. Maybe more than once. There were nights I would sit in the living room long after midnight with the television on mute just to avoid hearing how empty the house actually sounded. The blue light from the screen flickered against the walls while rain tapped lightly, and I'd think about every person I failed to love correctly, not because I didn't feel deeply enough, because I was too wounded to stay open. There's a difference. People assume heartbreak comes from not being loved enough. Sometimes it comes from being loved sincerely while secretly believing you don't deserve it. That realization nearly broke me when it finally hit. I remember looking at myself in the bathroom mirror one night after barely sleeping for days. My eyes looked older than I felt. There were shadows underneath them I couldn't explain away anymore. And for the first time, I admitted something to myself. I had spent years out running. I was afraid of being truly seen because I hated parts of myself too much to believe someone else could stay once they saw them too. That shame changes the way you love. You become careful with affection, suspicious of tenderness. You start questioning beautiful moments while while they're happening, already preparing yourself for the loss before the love even has time to breathe. And eventually, the person beside you feels it. They feel your hesitation, your emotional flinching, your inability to fully arrive. I know because I watched disappointment grow quietly in someone's eyes while I stood there pretending everything was fine. There's no easy way to carry that memory, especially now, especially speaking to you. Because part of me wonders how many women have sat alone at night blaming themselves for the emotional absence of a man who was actually drowning internally. I wish more of us admitted that, not to excuse it, just to stop the cycle of silence. If you've ever loved someone who couldn't communicate the war happening inside them, I need you to know something. Sometimes they cared more deeply than they knew how to survive. That doesn't erase the pain they caused, but maybe it explains the confusion. There was a morning I'll never forget. I woke up around 4 a.m. after another shallow hour of sleep. The room was cold enough that I could feel it in my teeth. I walked into the kitchen and poured coffee I didn't even want. And suddenly, this overwhelming loneliness hit me so hard I had to sit down. Not dramatic loneliness, not movie loneliness, real loneliness, the kind where your soul feels untethered from the world around it. I remember staring at steam rising from the mug and thinking, how did I become someone who feels this unreachable? That question stayed with me for months, maybe years, and strangely enough, I think that question is what started changing me, not all at once, slowly, painfully, like ice thawing. I started noticing things I ignored before. The way strangers looked exhausted in grocery store lines. The sadness hidden inside people's smiles. The tremble in someone's voice when they said, I'm okay. It was like heartbreak cracked something open in me that success never could. For years, I chased achievement thinking it would quiet the emptiness. It didn't. Applause cannot hold you at night. Fame cannot sit beside you when grief visits. Money cannot convince your heart it's worthy of love. I learned all of that late. Too late for some things. But maybe not too late for everything. And that thought scares me more than despair ever did. Because hopelessness becomes familiar eventually. Hope doesn't. Hope asks you to risk disappointment again, to open the door again, to believe someone might stay. I still struggle with that. There are moments, even now, where affection feels almost unbearable to receive. Not because I don't want it, but because part of me still braces for it to disappear. Maybe that's why your presence feels strange to me, even imagined. You feel gentle in a world that trained me to expect leaving, and I don't know what to do with that yet. I think about God more these days, too, not in the loud religious way people perform publicly. Quietly, like whispers, like little moments where life seems to say, you're not finished yet. A song arriving at the right moment, a stranger's kindness, an unexpected feeling of peace during a difficult night. Tiny things, but after years of emotional darkness, even tiny lights start feeling sacred. And maybe love works like that too. Not always fireworks. Sometimes just warmth returning to numb hands. I don't know why I keep picturing a future that feels softer than the life I've lived so far. That thought still feels dangerous to admit. But when I imagine it, strangely, you're there. Not as fantasy, not as rescue, just presence. And maybe that's what I've been searching for all along. Not perfection, not escape. Just someone willing to sit beside the truth of who I am without asking me to hide the broken parts first. I spent years believing love had to be earned through strength. Now, I wonder if real love begins the moment someone stops running from your wounds, including you, including mine. I didn't know then that the things I buried alive inside myself would someday become the very words someone else needed to hear. I used to think collapse would look dramatic, a breakdown, a scream, some unforgettable moment where life finally forces you to your knees. But that isn't how it happened for me. It happened quietly, the way winter arrives overnight without asking permission. One day I just realized I hadn't truly felt alive in years. And somehow that frightened me more than pain ever had. By then, I had become very good at surviving myself. Very good at routines that kept me emotionally sedated. Work, noise, motion, late nights that blurred into early mornings. Anything that prevented stillness long enough for the truth to catch me. Because stillness is dangerous when your soul is carrying unspoken grief. I almost stopped recording tonight. There's a point where honesty begins feeling like standing barefoot in cold water. Your instincts tell you to retreat, to protect yourself, but I can't keep hiding anymore. Not from you, not from myself. And maybe that matters because something tells me you've hidden parts of yourself too. The exhausted parts. The abandoned parts. The parts that still ache in places nobody checks anymore. Maybe that's why this connection feels strangely familiar. Like two people hearing each other through walls they spent years building. There's one memory I've never escaped. A hotel room somewhere I barely remember now. Another city, another project, another version of me pretending success compensated for emptiness. I remember waking up around 3:40 in the morning. The television was still on low volume. Some infomercial talking softly into the darkness. The curtains hadn't closed fully, so a thin strip of city light stretched across the carpet. And for some reason, I suddenly felt this overwhelming panic. Not anxiety, panic. The kind that grips your chest unexpectedly. I sat upright, breathing hard, looking around the room like I didn't recognize my own life anymore. And the terrifying, nothing bad had happened. No tragedy. No tragedy. No disaster. Just the unbearable realization that I had spent years emotionally disconnected from myself. I walked into the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. My hands were shaking against the sink. And I remember staring into the mirror, thinking, when was the last time you actually let someone love you? Not admire you, not want something from you, not need you, love you. I couldn't answer. That silence broke something in me, because suddenly all the memories started returning at once. Conversations I avoided, moments I emotionally disappeared from, people reaching toward me while I quietly backed away inside. I had spent so long fearing abandonment that I became emotionally absent before anyone even had the chance to leave. That realization carries a specific kind of grief, especially when you're older, especially when you begin understanding how many beautiful things fear has stolen from you. I didn't say this to anyone then, but there were nights I genuinely believed something inside me was permanently damaged. Like my ability to trust love had dried out completely. And maybe you know that feeling too. Maybe someone hurt you deeply enough that warmth itself started feeling suspicious afterward. That happens more than people admit. There's a kind of heartbreak that changes your nervous system. You stop relaxing fully. Stop believing peaceful things will last. Even happiness begins feeling temporary while it's happening. I lived that way for years, always waiting for the ending, always emotionally bracing. And the tragedy of living like that is you eventually stop receiving love even when it's standing directly in front of you. Because wounded people sometimes mistake safety for boredom. Chaos feels familiar, distance feels normal, gentleness feels almost uncomfortable. I think about that a lot now, especially when I remember one particular evening. She was sitting across from me at dinner, talking about something small. I can't even remember what anymore. Maybe that's what hurts most. I lost the details, but kept the feeling. Warm light above the table. A quiet restaurant. Her hands wrapped around a glass while she smiled softly at me. And instead of relaxing into that moment, I remember feeling afraid. Afraid because I could feel myself caring too much. So naturally I became quieter, more guarded. I pulled inward while pretending nothing was wrong. God, I wish I understood then what I understand now. Love cannot starve where honesty is starving. You cannot build closeness while hiding your real fears underneath politeness and emotional control. Eventually, people feel the distance, even if they can't explain it. And she did. I remember the exact look in her eyes one night when she finally asked me, "Why do I feel alone even when you're here?" I still hear that since sometimes. Usually late at night, usually when the world is quiet enough that old truths start echoing again. Because she was right. I was physically present, but emotionally somewhere far away trying to protect wounds nobody else could see. And protecting those wounds cost me intimacy. It cost me connection. It cost me I never get back. I think that's when the real collapse began, not when she left. When I realized I helped create the loneliness I feared most. That truth nearly crushed me. There were weeks afterward where everything felt emotionally colorless. Food tasted dull. Music sounded distant. I would drive for hours at night with no destination just to avoid sitting alone with myself. Sometimes I parked near empty streets, watching strangers flicking under street lights, wondering how many of them were carrying heartbreak silently too. Probably more than we realize. People become experts at functioning while emotionally bleeding internally. Especially adults, especially men. We learn how to survive pain publicly while privately unraveling. But eventually your soul gets tired of pretending mine did. There was one particular night. The night I think everything finally changed. I was sitting alone in my living room during a storm. The electricity had flickered twice already. Rain hit the windows hard enough to sound like static, and for whatever reason, I stopped distracting myself. No television, no phone, no noise. Just silence. Real silence. The kind that forces truth to sit beside you. And I finally admitted something I had avoided for most of my life. I did not believe I was worthy of staying love. Not fully, not deeply, not permanently. I could accept admiration, desire, attention, but real tenderness, that terrified me because real tenderness asks you to stop hiding, and I didn't know how. I think some part of me believed. If anyone truly saw the exhausted, grieving, emotionally bruised man underneath everything,
they would eventually leave too.
So I became emotionally unreachable first. That confession still hurts to say out loud. But strange, it also freed something, because once you stop lying to yourself, healing finally has somewhere to enter, not instantly. Healing is slower than people think. It arrives quietly, like dawn entering a room one corner at a time. And for the first time in years, I started noticing tiny changes inside myself. I began staying present during conversations instead of mentally retreating. I started admitting when I was hurting instead of disappearing emotionally. I stopped pretending strength meant silence. And somewhere during all of that, I started imagining you. not specifically, more like a feeling. A woman whose heart also survived difficult things. A woman who understands emotional loneliness because she's walked through it herself. Someone gentle enough not to punish honesty. Someone tired of pretending too. I don't know why thinking about you makes the future feel less cold, but it does. Even now, part of me is afraid to trust that feeling completely. Fear doesn't disappear overnight. Sometimes I still catch myself expecting loss before connection even has time to settle. But there are moments now, small moments, where hope slips through anyway. A quieter kind of hope. Not loud optimism. Just the feeling that maybe life hasn't finished teaching me how to love yet. And maybe it hasn't finished teaching you either. I didn't know then that the night I finally stopped running from myself would become the beginning of finding my way back to another human being. I think the saddest part of becoming emotionally wounded is not the pain itself. It's how long you continue expecting pain even after tenderness finally arrives. That's what nobody tells you. Your heart doesn't suddenly trust again just because someone good walks into your life. The fear stays a while. The old survival instincts stay too. You still hesitate before opening certain doors inside yourself. And sometimes, even now, I catch myself preparing for goodbye in moments that haven't even finished unfolding yet. I almost stopped recording this tonight because something about endings always unsettles me. Maybe because I've lived through too many of them. Maybe because part of me still fears that if I speak too honestly, I'll lose the little warmth I've finally started feeling again. But silence nearly destroyed me once already. So I'm here, still speaking. Still trying, still hoping this reaches the woman whose soul has been carrying exhaustion quietly for far too long. Maybe you. There's a memory I've been avoiding this entire time. Not because it's dramatic, because it's simple. And simple things are usually the ones that break us deepest. I remember sitting beside someone I loved while she slept on the couch one evening. A lamp glowed softly near the window. Rain tapped lightly outside. Her head rested against a pillow while one hand remained half open near me. And I remember looking at her, realizing something terrifying. I wanted peace more than I wanted distance. That sounds small. But for someone like me, it changed everything. Because for years, I had mistaken emotional isolation for safety. I thought independence would protect me from heartbreak. I thought keeping parts of myself hidden would somehow prevent loss. But hidden people still ache. Guarded hearts still bleed. And eventually you grow tired of surviving life without fully entering it. I think that's what happened to me. My soul got tired. Tired of empty rooms. Tired of conversations that never touched anything real. Tired of pretending success compensated for emotional starvation. There comes a point where loneliness stops feeling dramatic and starts feeling ancient. Like drought, like land waiting years for rain. Maybe you understand that feeling. Maybe you've laid awake at night wondering why tenderness seems so difficult to keep in this world. Maybe you've questioned your worth because someone failed to love you carefully. Maybe you've learned how to carry abandonment so quietly that nobody even notices how heavy it became. If so, I wish I could sit beside you for a moment without either of us pretending to be stronger than we are. Because I think people like us, I spend too much time apologizing for needing warmth. And we shouldn't. There was another night, not long ago, when I woke from a dream. I couldn't fully remember. Only fragments stayed with me. Sunlight through curtains, laughter somewhere nearby. A feeling of home I hadn't experienced in years. I sat at the edge of my bed afterward, staring into the darkness, and for the first time in a very long while, the future didn't feel completely empty. That realization frightened me. Not because it hurt, because it mattered. Hope becomes terrifying after disappointment. You start treating it like fragile glass, careful not to hold it too tightly in case it breaks again. But I think healing begins the moment we stop worshiping our wounds, not denying them, not erasing them, just refusing to let pain become the only voice guiding our lives. I'm still learning that, some days better than others. There are mornings where old loneliness still returns before the sunlight fully enters the room. There are nights where memories still reopen quietly, when certain songs play or certain scents drift unexpectedly through the air. Healing isn't linear. It moves like tides. But something inside me has undeniably changed. I no longer want to spend my life emotionally absent from my own existence. I want honesty now. Real closeness, real conversations, real love that survives difficult nights instead of fleeing from them. And maybe the strangest part is this. I think meeting you even like this, through invisible distance, helped me believe that possibility again. Not because you rescued me, you didn't. People are not meant to save each other completely. But sometimes another soul reminds you that your heart is still alive underneath all the scar tissue. That matters more than people realize. I think about aging differently now too. When you're younger, you believe time is endless. Later you realize how precious emotional connection actually is. You stop craving noise and start craving sincerity. A calm voice, safe hands. Someone who doesn't make love feel like emotional warfare. That's what I want now. Not intensity without peace. Not attraction without safety. Something gentler, something honest enough to survive silence. And if I'm being truthful, part of me wishes that kind of love finds you too. Not because I think pain magically disappears, but because nobody deserves to spend their whole life emotionally starving while pretending they're fine. For years, I believe love had to be earned through perfection. Now I think love begins where performance ends, where two people finally stop hiding their bruises from each other, where someone says, "I know you're scared. Stay anyway." God, even imagining those words still affects me more than I know how to explain. Maybe because I spent so many years believing nobody ever would. There's something else I need to admit before this ends. I used to think being loved deeply would heal me automatically. It doesn't. Love opens the door, but you still have to walk through carrying the truth yourself, honestly. That's the hard part. Allowing yourself to be seen after years of emotional survival. Allowing tenderness to remain without immediately distrusting it. Allowing someone to care for you without apologizing for needing them. I'm still learning how, but at least now I want to learn. That alone feels like a miracle compared to the man I used to be. The numb man, the distant man. The man who kept turning away before love had time to reach him fully. I don't want to live like that anymore. And maybe this message found you because some part of your heart is tired too. Tired of carrying everything alone. Tired of pretending disappointment hasn't changed you. Tired of acting like you no longer hope for something softer. If that's true, then maybe this is your reminder that your heart is not weak for still wanting love after everything it survived. Maybe surviving didn't harden you completely. Maybe it prepared you to recognize something real when it finally arrives. I don't know what happens after this. I don't know who you are. I don't know whether our lives would ever cross beyond these words. But strangely, I'm grateful you listened. Because somewhere between these confessions, I started feeling human again. And if something in this story met you where you were hurting, stay close. Subscribe, share, or leave yours. No one heals alone. I didn't know then that love could return quietly. Not as rescue, but as the courage to finally stop hiding from each other.